Docker is one of the most famous container options currently available in the market. The Docker components include the Docker daemon that manages all the containers running on that host, Docker image, using which you create Docker container instances where containerized applications run, Docker registry to store these Docker images, and clients to build and manage these containers. You should also be familiar with storage and networking in Docker containers. And we recommend 11 hands-on lab that you must perform to learn Docker containers like experts. So what are these 11 guides that you must perform? We're going to look at all this in today's episode. Welcome to part 2 of 5-part video series on Docker and Kubernetes with me, Atul Kumar from team Keton Academy, where we help you in journey to cloud and cloud native applications like Docker and Kubernetes. So in part 1 of this series, our Docker and Kubernetes expert Mamta covered how containers are different from virtual machines and how multiple Docker containers running on the same operating system provide isolation and resource limit using namespace and control group. So that episode is available on ketonacademy.com/docker12. So let's continue from part 1, and in this episode she will first begin with Docker architecture, its components, images, registry, and clients. She will then move on to explaining what are the different container lifecycle, and then she will discuss about the storage options as well as networking options available. And then moving to the next topic about the automating Docker image creation using Dockerfile and version controlling these Docker files. And we finally wrap up all the hands-on lab that you must perform in order to learn Docker and Kubernetes. So in Docker, there are 11 labs and another 22 labs we recommend for Kubernetes in our Docker and Kubernetes training. So let's see what she has to say.
Let's understand what exactly is Docker, right? We understood what is containerization, and now let's understand Docker. Docker is a containerization technology. It helps us in attaining good facilities like developing, shipping, quicker way of doing. It's one of the DevOps tools, and DevOps says a quicker time to market, a shorter time to market, right? Docker brings that, and because we are not dependent on the underlying operating system, it's providing a very less friction in shipping the codes and all. And that is the reason it is one of the best environments to develop, test, and even deploy. Let's see the architecture. So it is like a client server architecture over here. We would have a client from wherein you can run the Docker commands. We would have the host, which is actually running the Docker daemon, the Docker which we had seen in the previous slides, the containerization platform. That is the one which is called as the Docker host. It's running like a daemon, and we can create containers, and Docker daemon helps us perform everything, building the containers, building images, running the containers, and managing the complete life cycle in a standalone machine. But if anything happens to the containers, restarting and all those facilities are not there. And when we are talking about Docker containers, we can't leave images. How without a operating system image, you can't boot a virtual machine. Same way, if you don't have a Docker container image, you can't boot a Docker container. So image is one of the basic building blocks of that. So when we are saying that we are spinning up a container, how we have a template or an operating system to spin up a virtual machine, our image of a container would be a thin layer of operating system plus the application. For example, if I have an Ubuntu thin layer, it would be 30 MB in size. It's not full bulky operating system. And on top of it, I have the Apache web server running, and it together would be consuming things in MBs. Okay, so that was the images. Let's see how the life cycle revolves around the containers. I can create a container and it gets created. Immediately it goes to the running state, and I can directly run a container without creating it with the Docker run command as well. And it goes to the running state. In case I want to stop a container, I can do that with a stop command. So Docker comes with very good command line tools using which we can run simple commands and attain that isolation, attain that limiting, and run application within microseconds. In case I want to delete a container, I can run a Docker rm command and the container gets deleted. In case I don't want to delete, I want to start a stopped container, I can do that and go back to the running state. If a container is running, imagine container is just like a process, right? An application process running inside that. You can pause them, you can unpause those as well and come back to running state. And in case you have created and you want to still go ahead and delete it, you can run the rm command and you can delete the containers. So this way you can manage the complete life cycle. I'm coming up with an application on top of an operating system, but the difference here, it's not a full-fledged operating system. It is only a thin layer of operating system which is needed for my application to boot. So if I take a Ubuntu image, I don't even have Vim, I don't even have Ping, I don't even have any application. I have to do an apt-get update and then get those applications or software packages inside that. Let's see, when virtual machines are running, obviously to reach them, we need IP addresses. Same for the Docker also, we would be needing IP addresses to reach them, right? So there are different types of networking which are possible in Docker. But when the Docker container or Docker daemon is installed in a machine, it comes up with a default bridge, which is called as the bridge network, the Docker 0. It's named as Docker 0. So this is a machine. It could be a virtual machine in the cloud on which you are running Docker, or it could be a physical server. A lot of people are asking, where can I run it? You can run it anywhere, starting from a bed. It needs an operating system below it. So you can run it on a physical server or a cloud as well. So you install a containerization platform like Docker. It automatically creates a bridge. And when you are launching containers, it would be created on that bridge. And this bridge has an external connectivity using the ETH0, the NIC interface of that server itself. And if I'm launching any application, it gets the IP address of the range of that particular bridge. And these IP addresses are dynamic IP addresses. They are private IP addresses. And if case they want to talk to each other on the same bridge, they can happily do that within the system, within the server. They can do that. And if they want to expose a port for the external connectivity, that also is possible. Port number 80 on the application can be bound to port number 5000 on the host. So whenever the packet comes on port number 5000 on the host, it gets directed to port 80 on that particular application. So here it is the translation NAT happening, network address translation, from the public IP address of the machine to the private IP address of the container over here. Coming to the storage part, so we saw a little bit of networking. I'm not going into deep, but just bringing up all the building blocks. We saw the networking part. We are getting an IP address. Let's understand how is the storage in it. Docker containers have few drawbacks. They don't have a static IP address. They don't have a persistent memory, and we would be covering that over here. So Docker containers base layer with which it comes up. Imagine that you're bringing up a virtual machine, you come with a image, and that image is a read-only image, right? You can't make changes to that. Same way, the read-only image with which the container comes up is the lower layer, and the top layer is the read-write layer on which you can write it. You are able to write on that layer, but that layer is pretty thin. How much you ask for, that much gets allocated. And when containers are starting, they would get both the layers, but the writable layer is ephemeral layer. It will not retain the things. So as soon as you make changes to your container, you take a snapshot and you prepare an image out of it, out of the running container. It's exactly the same mapping towards virtual machine. If I make changes to my virtual machine, I take a snapshot and have the latest image. Here also you will have to do that. But we can provide persistency to our application. How in virtual machines we are mounting disks, same way you can mount a path in the host on which the Docker is running inside the container, or you can have a volume, a network volume, which can be mounted inside the container. We discussed about images, we discussed about storage, we discussed about networking. So whenever a machine is running, we have the same things, right? If I have a virtual machine, I have a storage attached to it, I have an image with which it starts, I have a networking associated with it. So container is nothing much different than a virtual machine, but it is smaller in size, it is not bulkier, it is not associated to the underlying operating system, and that's the biggest advantage. What advantage do I get if I'm not tied up to the operating system? I don't have the dependencies in the environment variable tied up. If I capture the image of a container, I have all the dependencies involved or captured in it in the snapshot itself. If I talk about virtual machine, when I was with Alcatel-Lucent long time back working on telecom, I used to face hell lot of issues when I used to provide the images to the testers and they used to say, Mamta, it's not working as expected in a QA environment or the regression environment, right? Because the dependencies are not captured. So we can automate the image creation because that's one of the biggest thing using Dockerfile. We write a script and that helps us creating the images and deploy the container, and we can version control these Docker files so that we can have different versions of the images and we can keep a log of what was the changes done in it. So Dockerfile is the method with which you can automate the image creation process. So let's understand, in case we want to learn Docker, what exactly we have to learn. We have to learn how to install Docker. We have to learn how to work with containers, what are the commands are, how to create an image, how to delete an image, how to tag an image. Once containers are there, how the networking path to the neighboring container, what would be the IP address? Do I launch my container on the same bridge? Do I need a custom bridge? Or do I need a different type of networking altogether? There is host networking, non-networking. There are different types of networking. And once the networking is in place, we would go to the next building block of the storage, how to mount the persistent storage inside that, the storage and the volume, both the host path mounting and the volume. And once these are running, we should be aware how the logging is in place, how the storage drivers are, who is resolving our DNS and all that stuff, right? So those things have to be learned in depth. And then we would be learning how to automate the stuffs with Dockerfile, Docker Compose, and bringing up the complete application stack altogether. So if I have a web server and a database, I'll create two containers and make them run together. So here we covered the Docker part and we understood that containers are providing a lot of advantage, but I mentioned there are a lot of disadvantages as well, right? IP address is not fixed. The storage is not persistent. You're able to mount the storage, no doubt in it. But till the time we are talking about Docker, I never mentioned that inter containers or inter-host communication was possible. Like this, talking across host is not possible with plain Docker. And why is that? Because it doesn't have the capability of doing bridge-to-bridge networking. To do a bridge-to-bridge networking, we need something like a gateway bridge. And that is when the tools like Kubernetes and all come into picture.
Well, that was Docker and Kubernetes expert Mamta talking about the Docker architecture and components on a video taken from one of our free trainings. So now, if you want to learn more on Docker and Kubernetes, so things like what is a Docker container architecture, networking, storage, and then what is Kubernetes and what's the difference between Kubernetes and Docker. We'll also talk about the certification for Kubernetes, which is Certified Kubernetes Administrator. So if you're interested to learn more, then I would like to invite you for a free approx 90-minute free training, and you can register by going to ketonacademy.com/Kubernetes02. Now, in the next part 3 of this 5-part video series, I'll bring her back covering Kubernetes architecture and components. We'll look at what is Kubernetes master node and then multiple worker node. We'll look at the component of master node, things like API server, controller, scheduler, etcd. And then in the worker node, we'll look at things like pods, kubelets, and kubeproxy. So if you have not yet subscribed to our YouTube channel, then make sure you subscribe the YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/Keton so that you get notification when we release this next video. Well, that's all from me, Atul, from team Keton Academy, where we help you in your journey to cloud and cloud native applications running on Docker and Kubernetes. I'll see you in next video.